In this lecture, we're going to be talking about protists. So that is everything from this anthocytus here, which is a single-celled organism, to tetrahymena, which is a multiciliated single-celled organism, to these multicellular giant kelp forests. And I'm not going to bury the lead again with this one. The point or the idea behind protists is they're eukaryotes. So you should be able to know some things about them immediately. They have membrane-bound organelles. They have a nucleus. But they are eukaryotes that don't fit within animals, fungi, or plants. Okay, so this is an incredibly diverse group that doesn't fit into your traditional animal, plant, fungi eukaryote. And we're gonna talk more about that later. So the book makes a point of showcasing that they are typically heterotrophic. They usually will eat other things, sometimes using this process that we looked at in a previous lecture in this section and that we've looked at in previous sections, but the process of phagocytosis. They can also be, in addition to heterotrophic, they can also be photosynthetic. So like those kelp forests, they can use the energy from the sun to make their own food. But this is just showcasing, again, making sure that you've got the idea of phagocytosis down. It's bringing things in, forming this vesicle, and then it's going to take that and subject it to the lysosome, and then get rid of, through exocytosis, get rid of any waste products that it might have. But the point that I'm making here is that protists can either eat other things or they can be photosynthetic. So again, protists, these are the six major groups of eukaryotes, by the way. The six supergroups, not major groups, the six supergroups of eukaryotes, and you have protists within each and every single one of these. And so if you were going to try to make a circle around protists and their most recent common ancestor, which would be back here, you would not have a monophyletic group, right? So if you remember from the last section what a monophyletic group is, protists definitely do not fall within that. So they are a very diverse group. Where they all came from is somewhat unclear. It doesn't appear as though all protists have a common ancestor that just links just protists back together. And so these are kind of, protists are kind of misfits in the world of eukaryotes. The other thing about protists is that they very often form either symbiotic or parasitic relationships with other organisms. So here's a picture of some blood cells that have been infected with Plasmodium falciparum. This is a type of single-celled protist. And Plasmodium is actually what results in malaria. So you get malaria from these creepy little blood parasites. Trypanosomes are another kind of protist, and you can see them amongst some, again, red blood cells here. Again, protists are very often parasites for animals, but they are also parasites for plants, as you can see here, causing these different kinds of mildews, causing this thing to rot completely. So protists very often are parasitic to animals and plants, but they can also form symbiotic relationships, such as the case with these corals and dinoflagellates, not diano, corals and dinoflagellates. So what's happening is dinoflagellates are going to colonize the tissues of these coral. And then the dinoflagellates are actually going to photosynthesize and allow the coral to use most of the products that they create from that. Okay, so, and the coral are going to give the dinoflagellates a place to live, and they're going to form a symbiotic relationship in that way. I'm probably not going to ask you guys for specific details about any of these things, but what I'd like you to know is that protists are kind of the misfit group of the eukaryotes. They are non-monophyletic. They don't fit within plants, animals, or fungi, which is why they're all kind of grouped together, because they're just weirdos. They can be photosynthetic. they can be heterotrophic, and they are very often parasitic or symbiotic.